Hello and happy Thursday. Pastor Aaron here with your devotional thought for today. Thank you for your replies to my offer last week of sending me some topics you'd like me to cover in my weekly devotions. Feel free to keep on sending me some ideas for topics, but for now, I intend to cover the topic of why the Old Testament is just as important as the New Testament and how we can see Jesus throughout all of it. Now, I don't know how long this will take, but it could possibly take all summer. So hang tight, buckle up. I hope you look forward to this as much as I do. I do believe that this topic is especially pertinent as we have seen some prominent celebrity Christian pastors say some things that don't quite jive with the traditional doctrine of Orthodox Christianity. For example, Rob Bell and his denunciation of the existence of hell, or perhaps Andy Stanley and his call to unhitch your faith from the Old Testament because, as he has said, it's violent, disturbing, and offends all of our modern sensibilities. Well, this latter new teaching from Andy Stanley actually is nothing new. There was this guy by the name of Marcion who lived in the 2nd century AD who had similar sentiments. He was the son of a bishop in Asia Minor and grew in prominence for his own preaching and ministry and a version of the faith that distanced itself from the Old Testament. He was also the first person to come up with a definite canon of Christian writings, or in other words, he decided which scripture writings were authoritative and ought to be included in the Bible and which ought to be thrown out. Well, one time he traveled from Asia Minor to Rome with a message about the God of love. Marcion's teaching, of course, appeared to be Christian because he held that Jesus revealed divine love to its fullest extent, which is true. But when the leaders of the Church of Rome found out the details of Marcion's message, they were shocked and appalled. It turns out that Marcion's God of love was a violent opponent of the evil deity of law who dominated the Old Testament. As part of his message, Marcion claimed to have defined the limits of an authoritative scripture concerning Jesus. So, his version of the Bible was no Old Testament, an edited version of the Gospel of Luke that took out any references by Jesus to the Old Testament, and edited forms of 10 of St. Paul's letters that had anything Jewish about them. Now, some of you may be listening to this and thinking, what? The Bible didn't fall out of the sky as one complete document with crisp and clear boundaries? Well, no, it didn't. Sorry to burst your bubble. The Bible that we know today was written over the course of 1,500 years by over 40 different human authors with one divine author inspiring it all, that is, God, directing it. The existing historical evidence that we have shows that though the epistles of Paul and the 4 Gospels were used as authoritative documents from a very, very early period after Jesus' ascension, it took a process of more than 2 centuries to define the precise shape of the New Testament. I know, shocking, right? However, as my professor at the seminary used to say about things like this, that were maybe a little disturbing and uncomfortable for us, sure, there may have been some early discussions as to which books of Scripture ought to be authoritative and which ones ought to be left out, but that doesn't mean that Jesus didn't rise from the dead. The Christian faith does indeed depend on the person and work of Jesus, to whom the Scriptures testify. Jesus is the foundation of our faith, not the Bible. The Bible points to Jesus. Now, as it relates to the Old Testament, Jesus quoted it all the time. It was how he battled against Satan in the wilderness before his public ministry. It was how he announced his public ministry in Luke chapter 4 as he grabbed a scroll of Isaiah and he rolled it out and then he began reading it in the synagogue, saying, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And then he rolled the scroll back up and handed it to the attendant, sat down, and told everyone, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." So how about that? Reinforcing the Old Testament. In Matthew chapter 5, in Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes even one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Another one of my favorite defenses for the importance of the Old Testament comes in Luke's gospel, right at the end, when Jesus encounters some disciples on the road to Emmaus, after he rose from the dead. And he says, and Luke records, "And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he, Jesus, interpreted them in all the scriptures, the things concerning himself." I would have loved to have been there for that moment. Another one from St. Paul that is pertinent to this discussion is 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, where he writes, "All scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work." Now, what do you think when Paul writes all scripture? What is he referring to? Do you think he's referring to the very words that he was writing at that very moment? All scripture is breathed out by God? Or is he referring to something else? In my humble opinion, this is more of a defense for the divinely inspired Old Testament scriptures and the importance of them than it is for what St. Paul is writing in that very moment. But more on all that later as we roll this out. For now, I hope you have I've piqued your interest and I haven't lost you in the weeds here, but next week I'll start in Genesis, and I'll start explaining where Jesus is in all of the scriptures. And for those of you who are nerds, theological nerds, I have some great books for you to tackle in your spare time. Turning Points, Decisive Moments in the History of Christianity by Mark A. Noll. That's a great one to look at some of these ancient heresies and how they just keep popping up over time. But the early church and the apostolic succession of bishops, they wrestled with all these questions about the divinity of Jesus, about the importance of the Old Testament, how we got the canon of Scripture, which brings me to my next piece of resources here. This is the Canon of Scripture by F. Bruce. This one is solid. If you really want to know how we got the Bible, I recommend this one. In this one, Martin Franzmann wrote The Word of the Lord Grows. This is also a great book on the canon of Scripture and how we got the Bible that we have today. So those are some resources for you. And now, if you're still with me, I hope you stick a little bit longer because I got a little video from Open Arms here. They just started this new thing called Dance Party, and they have fun dancing and exercising. These kids just have a blast. So hopefully you tune in and watch a little bit of that. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day. Bye-bye.